Today we got Maruthi Medisetty, the founder and CEO of Blue AI Labs. So Blue is bringing the fight to the sales enablement platforms. They don't know what's coming, and it's going to be an exciting one. So I'm excited for this founder. Dialing in from New York, Maruthi's building teams that close deals, and he's doing it right when everyone's trying to figure out how it actually works, the whole sales coaching and enablement. He got a solution for you. So before Blue, he scaled go-to-market at Rippling and Remote for tens of hundreds of millions of ARR. And he's a repeat founder who knows exactly what it takes to turn a scrappy startup into a serious revenue-generating machine. Now he's using AI to make sales teams stop learning on live deals and start getting paid faster. Maruthi, great to have you here. Let's get paid. Maruthi, so good to have you on the podcast. Thanks again for coming.
Likewise, man. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, no, so you know the format, right? So we're going to talk shop and you're going to drop some knowledge for all those who are listening about how you get paid and how you make money building agents. And what I love about my conversation we're about to have is that you're a sales guy. So finally I get to talk to another sales guy. So you're going to be dropping some very strong, wisdom to our listeners here on how do you build something and get paid for doing that.
Absolutely. Very excited for this.
So tell us a little bit more about the company you're building and what does it do?
Sure. So the company is Blue AI Labs, and what we are trying to do here is build agents which can help sellers augment their superpowers or probably make them better humans overall in the process and differentiate themselves in this noisy bot world. So that's how we categorize, and that's what we're doing day in and day out.
And what does your superhuman thing do? Like how do you make a human a superhuman?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that we have consistently seen is sellers kind of sometimes don't know what is working and what is working, right? And for them, and also a lot of times they don't have enough at bats, and they go and they kind of do things live on the deal, and they learn post facto. They don't probably learn proactively in a way that how can they be little better. So that's where the first and foremost thing that we're giving is we're giving AI agents, which are voice agents, where they can go and practice, which mimic their customers, which mimic real world scenarios, almost sounding like a human talking to them, where they can go and they can have all this, kind of a sparring sessions with it, and then get better and level up themselves.
So I never told you this, Maruti, but I bought a domain
Hmm.
called salesgym.com.
Okay. Yeah.
And the idea of that domain was that in my view, at Outreach I sold to salespeople, right? So and I
Yeah.
started selling to individuals. I actually didn't sell to companies until we hit $1 million. So I sell to
Yeah.
you personally,
Yeah.
and I will tell you that for the price of a Starbucks latte, you can just buy Outreach and improve your pipeline. And then I
Yep.
realized that pipeline was not enough. You actually needed reps
Yeah.
to you needed to get in some reps to make sure that you actually work that pipeline through so that you didn't screw up. Like, every call had to have the same sort of routine, right? Do
Yeah.
is 30, you still don't have 30 minutes to have this conversation. So last
Yeah.
time we talked about this, and this. So what I expect to accomplish on this call is this, is that you align with that. Well, great. So this is what I saw in the last thing. This is
Yeah.
the trends that I'm seeing in your market. Is that you agree with that? Tell me more about your problem. You see what I mean? Like, and that took
100%.
reps. So tell
Yeah.
me, how are you, inducing those reps to happen?
Totally, Manny. I think you're spot on with that observation from whatever you've done with whole of outreach, right? And as you could look at, the customer acquisition costs are raising so much, where marketing puts in a lot of effort to drive leads, and then you don't want your seller to screw it up. And for a long time, the conversion rates have always been between 15 to 20%, and we are questioning why is that? How can we improve that to 30%, 40%? And who is the most what's the key leverage point for that improvement? And that's the sellers themselves. So what the sellers do, it every time they talk to our agents, they just get leveled up. And even after, they can also plug in their gong calls or any of their meeting recorder calls to this agent here, and it would identify how you're progressing on a certain skill. And we don't flood them with multiple things. We help them focus on one or two skills across a month. And then as
Yeah.
they get better, we do identify from the real world calls where they're still lacking, and we give them personalized and very proactive simulations. That's the key. And that's all is possible with LLMs. And that's a big unlock.
Yeah. So what when people buy you, what are the outcomes that they're buying?
Great question. So the outcomes that they're buying is their reps completely leveling up and seeing an increase in the conversion. That's the critical outcome. And the
Mm,
other way is like today, if you look at, and you know it more than anyone else being in this industry, the way it worked, and I have seen this real time at in my previous two companies, Rippling and Remote, we had like more than 100 sellers. We had a lot of data, all the meeting recorder from Gong or and other tools coming in. And first, the data needs to be analyzed by a human. Do you think really like can a human even go and review 100 calls? It's manually like very fatiguing task. They hate it, but they still need to do it. They do it. So sales enablement goes and reviews all of that. Then they pass it on to product marketing team, where the product marketing team would even go and check, oh, is our messaging even landing? How are the customers reacting? And then this goes on for a month or 2 months. Then they come and say, okay, this part of messaging is landing, this is not landing, this pitch is going well, this is not going well. All of this takes a lot of human effort. Now think about all of that being replaced by an agent. Like 90% of that aspect is done by agent, and only 10% needs to be reviewed by the sales enablement product marketing
holy shit!
person
That
and the
whole thing
seller.
is replaced by an agent.
Yes,
The whole
that's
thing,
that whole thing. Yep.
dude. That was a lot of stuff. That was
Yeah,
like,
that's
identifying the calls, assembling the calls, you know, uh, enable you, product marketing and enablement were thrown in the mix. I even forgot exactly how they work, but I'm sure they're in there. And there's a lot of people in those organizations. And then at the end of that supply chain, what's there? Like a
yeah,
golden record? Is a golden master how you're supposed to be running calls? Is
yeah.
that?
Yeah, the outcome at the end of that supply chain is, hey, here is a talk track for this
Hmm.
segment that's working very well for all your SMB sellers. And here are 10 reps who are deviating away from this talk track. And here is a scenario, and here's a role play or an agent where they can go and practice this talk track and get better on that. Boom.
Got it.
That's
Got
proactive
it.
enablement.
Got it. Got it. So again, what are you holding yourself accountable to? Is the talk track, the 10 reps being identified that need to improve their talk track, or the
Mhm.
talk track landing in their head and coming out of their mouth? Like which one of that is your responsibility?
So the primary one is the talk track landing with the customers, them saying it out of their mouths and then increasing the conversion. That's the primary, and the secondary is the identifying the talk track. These are the two outcomes.
That's awesome. So how are you aligning yourself to those outcomes? Like what is the mechanisms you're using in your go to market and your storytelling and your pricing and your positioning and your packaging to make sure that those outcomes are part of the sales cycle?
Yeah, it's a very different approach on how we are looking at it. We are not looking at per seat, per user, all that aspect. And I see that you have been a great advocate of outcomes these days, right? So for us, it's about currently it's usage, like how many minutes is someone practicing, and then also how much time are we saving on the enablement side, and then finally, are we seeing any uplift in the conversion rates when they're delivering this message? Right? So these are the three metrics that we clearly track, and the pricing is today purely based on the number of minutes.
Okay, so let's start again. So what is the first one?
The number of minutes that they go and do the role play with the agents.
Got it. And the second one is time savings for enablement. So
Yep, time savings for enablement in doing all this analysis.
and the third is conversion rates.
Yes,
Okay, so out of the three, and you're only charging for minutes.
yep. Right now
So
it's
you
only minutes.
oh well, so what happened to the other two? It feels like money on the table.
It's totally money on the table, and that's where we are still exploring how do we measure that outcome and attribute it to the success of the tool. And today we are working with some design partners on figuring that out. That's a great
Interest
opportunity that's left for
Interesting.
us.
So riff with me. So how give you an estimate for a rippling size organization.
Mhm.
I don't know how many sales enablement people are there, but they have a lot of everything. So
Yeah.
how many hours would they be saving per enablement person? How many hours would be saving total in an organization
Oh,
size of rippling if your tool was being deployed?
yeah. So let's say you have 5 enablement people in a team, and they're
Yeah.
reviewing at least even today practically, let's say, 10 calls per week. So that's 50 calls, and even reviewing those 50 calls is like 50 hours. That's it. Boom. All of that is removed, and it's all boiling down to 1 hour at the max, 2 hours today for them to just go and review it and approve once our agent will produce an output. They just need to go and review it. That's it.
The 50 hours a week is massive. It's like a person and a quarter.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a lot.
So are you charging a full-time equivalent of an enablement person? An enablement person makes what? Like 150, 200, and in the Bay it's more like 200 per year.
Yeah.
So like, are you pricing at a minimum $200,000 per year of use of Get
You know,
Blue?
we are exploring that.
Okay.
We are starting slow. We are starting with just like how you mentioned about, hey, replace your cappuccino with outreach. We are kind of going with that approach as well. And one of the things that we are seeing is people are loving the AI. The reps are using it. I see that the reps are practicing at least 60 to 75 minutes with the AI, and I've never seen them even do that kind of talking with their managers or even with their colleagues. And that's a big uplift, or not even spending that much time on a standard learning management system going and watching videos. So that's a big win that our customers are seeing today.
Holy shit, you just unblocked something for me. So now you don't need a learning management system.
Correct.
So there's a whole layer of SaaS stuff that you just throw out the window. That's a massive saving. So like Big Tin Can and like yeah, I mean, yeah, those
Yeah.
are ancient, but yes, Live Ramp,
Yeah.
and there's another one I'm drawing on. They're based out of Philly.
Okay.
Anyway, so you have an entire stack of enablement that now is not needed. So what about those savings? How are you capitalizing on those?
So today we are going in and saying that there's a base fee, which is what, when we are replacing their existing software, we are going with that base fee, and then everything else is usage. But our journey, and we are just 6 months old. Our journey is, how do we truly value that 50 hours or 48 hours that they're saving, and
Yeah,
then how do we attribute it to the percentage increase in the conversion rates, and
right.
and that's where I know that I have last time we spoke about paid, and that's where we are looking at tracking labor costs, or for lack of man hour costs, in a way that to show the clear attribution of these many man hours are saved. So hence, this is the outcome that we are delivering, and here is our pricing. So we
Yeah.
just want to clearly tie it down, and the whole idea of paying for the software, we want to remove that idea.
How do you think about the attribution problem that is so prominent in go-to-market, where you say, ideally, you would like to get paid for the improvement in conversion rate, like in the improvement of
Correct.
productivity per rep, right? Because that's your final metrics. So, you had a fella that came in at 100K per quarter,
Hmm.
and you got him to 150K per quarter,
Right.
just based on higher conversion rate.
Hmm.
Like, what would be your best argument for the attribution problem of how do you attribute this 50K improvement to you versus the environment, the market, better marketing, blah blah, better coaching, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Great question. I'm sure this had come to you multiple times, and this is a question that more than 200 of my customers, when I had this conversation, they asked the same question. How can you tell me that it is not a great macro economy and everyone wants to build a software, hence my reps? So I come from a math background, and also physics background. So I like equations a lot. So we developed this equation where we say that in this call, let's say the call recording that your rep happened to be done with a customer, when we glean that, and we bring an insight and saying that what are the different talking points that they have used, and then we match it the agent role play that they have already done, and how much of it is matching, and what are the skills that are matching here. So based on that match score, we give them an estimate that, hey, last week they did not even implement this particular talk track. Now they played with the role play and they implemented this, so this is directly attributed to the role play, right? So that's the equation that we're showing to people, where the delta of like that talk track coming in the original call and tying it back to the role play.
That's really really clever. So now you got me thinking. Okay, so you can actually show improvement in your application and as your agent is making this rep better, you can show
Yeah,
like how many times they have repeated it, how successful have they been, and then you can start implying a correlation to their improvement in
correct.
sales after some lag. and the only change in their life has been you, right? So that's kind of a
Correct.
favorable. Is that
Yeah.
how you think about it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how we think about it. And especially because it's conversations, now it could be pretty hard to say that, oh, the macroeconomy changed this conversation when I clearly could show that, man, this rep 1 month ago wasn't even talking this language. He did 50 practices with the agent here. Now this is bolted into his head. Now this
Hmm.
rep or her head now is talking about this. That means there's a clear correlation here.
Right, right, right. So tell me how much of in actual dollars and cents. So how much of that will you capture per quarter? So like assuming that you did deliver that improvement, like
Mhm.
what would be your value capture on that? What would you go into the sales manager and was like, I want X many dollars for that bump of improvement?
The At least the way I'm thinking is, and this is something that I've learned from one of our mentors who come from Google. And she said something very interesting. Like the way Google always had is, are we delivering 10x value any given time? So if we are doing 10x value, then we would always price that 1/10 is a thumb rule to start with, so that the customers can really feel the 10x difference in their heads and their perception wise. So today that's how we are aiming for. If I'm able to show, like, let's say there's a 50K bump in the conversion, then can I get 1/10 of it, which is 5K? And that's like boom.
Okay. But then if you do that, then you can only get 5K once, right? Because you're only gonna deliver the 50K bump one time. You
Hmm.
get the 5K. Are you gonna get the 5K in perpetuity? Or how's
You
that
know,
gonna work?
great question. Markets doesn't remain the same. The talk track that is working today won't work after a quarter. You know it more than
Yeah,
anyone of
yeah, yeah,
else
yeah.
here as an entrepreneur, right? Like, so that means these talk tracks need to be evolving. This is like new insights, new way of how you position your product, and you are also ever expanding. Like, for example, Rippling has 40 products, right? So they're
Yeah.
ever expanding their ICP, they're ever expanding the geography and product. So how do you go implement and then push those talk tracks, especially when it comes to new products? As you know, salespeople would like to get commissions through whatever is already selling rather than going and attaching a new product to it just because the management had said. Now, how do you show that, hey, with this tool, you can increase this revenue of this new product here as well? So, our thesis is that it will become a perpetuity because of the nature of the job and nature of how reps even deliver the talk tracks.
Yeah, but that's a separate value prop. I mean, now you put even more value that you're leaving on the table based
Yeah.
on the minute charges. So let's put that aside because like now you just
Yeah.
gave me more fodder. We're gonna be here all day. Okay, so just
Yeah.
everybody just sit down and grab a snack. So back to the okay. So you went from you capture 10% of the value
Yeah.
delivered, so 5K, right?
Yep.
How much are you capturing right now? So on a per rep basis, every quarter, charging per minute,
Mhm.
how much are you getting paid per rep? When let's assume when everything is said and done, like the hypothetical Maruti 6 months from like 6 months from now, you've been at 6 months,
Yeah.
6 months from now, you're a year in the market,
Yeah.
you're at that scale ish, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
got your product
Yeah.
market fit going.
Yeah.
How much
Yeah.
are you getting paid per rep per quarter in your ideal world on a
So
per minute basis?
in an ideal world, the way we are looking at it is, can we get to like 6K per rep? Because we are eliminating a bunch of sales enablement, we're eliminating a bunch of software, we are saving a lot of time, and we are
Yeah,
making your rep much better, like giving you this uplift. So we're looking at, can we get to 6K per rep
on a per minute basis.
per quarter
On
basis?
a per quarter basis. Okay, so
Yeah.
but how much like charging per minute right now? How many minutes
Yeah.
are your reps consuming on a quarterly basis?
Yeah. So today it's around anywhere from 600 to $1,000. That's where we are seeing with this purely this per minute basis pricing. Uh,
Got it.
yeah,
So you're leaving 5K on the table right now based on
for sure.
where you wanna
Yeah,
be. Okay.
yeah,
And thank you for bearing with me because
yeah,
questions that you're answering is the questions that everybody has. Like I just
yeah,
put you on the spot because we're here and all.
for
Um,
sure.
so what's your plan, to go from the 1K transactional consumption based minute base that is
Hmm.
sort of like kind of commodity pricing because you're pricing a minute. I mean, a minute is a
Yep.
minute is a minute
Yeah.
to get into this 6K value in which you're really capturing 10% of that whopping, 50% improvement in
Hmm.
rep productivity.
Yeah.
What's your plan?
So the path here is, first is we entered with the model that everyone is aware of, which is just the minutes model. Then the next path is the labor cost saved. That's where we are going to evolve. Then the last stage is to like go and do the attribution, because once people buy into each one of this in an incremental way, that's when they start believing that, oh my god, like, okay, we have saved the cost, now we have saved the software, now it's the outcome. And I think it's going to be an evolution over the next 12 to 18 months, is how we see that this goes in phases. And also, depending on one other thing that we're seeing is, let's say, if paid or one rippling or remote, or if one of them starts paying in this model, who are like the market leaders in a particular segment, that becomes a good template and a playbook for others also to say that, oh my god, okay, this is the best way for us to also pay them, rather than just paying for a software and then no one is using it.
That's amazing. So I love that you went from consumption to human equivalent value
Yep.
to
Yep.
outcome based. And
Correct.
and everyone has a journey that is sort of like that, right? Like you can't go from, wherever you are, seed or consumption, straight into outcomes, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of confusion and attribution, et cetera.
Yeah.
Is that a blocking in the human psychology, you think, or are you just waiting for the market to evolve to make it less weird over time? Like what forces that path in your mind? Like why you have to take this intermediate steps?
Yeah, great question. So it's a mix of two things. One is the market, because the market is used in a certain way of how they purchase, right? So think of it as how iPhone changed everything. They said that, oh, you pay monthly. Until then, we just used to pay for the device at one time, like all the phones that we used to purchase, right? So that one way to say that is, oh, the market is slowly ready because you just are giving so much bundling in that, right? So that's I think we're seeing that the market is getting there. And the second thing is for us to just like deliver that value itself with agents. And this is like agents 1.0 era that we are in. And as the reasoning models get better, as a base infrastructure gets better, our agents gets much better, right? Like for
Mm,
every 6 months, the agents are getting like 10x better, or the reasoning models are getting 10x better. So that means the agents will get 10x better. And that would be a significant way for the users to also see, oh my god, this is magical. So it's an evolution of the market and how they would perceive, and it's an evolution of the value that we're going to deliver in a magical way.
that's amazing. So how have you seen the technology unlock experience for you over the past, you've been in the market 6 months, but technology changes almost every 3 months.
Oh
So
man,
so
one
tell
week.
me, like, yeah, every week, right, right. So tell me, like, how has your product got unlocked by some advancement in, either LLMs or voice models
Totally.
or text to speech, or like to tell me more.
Yeah. So the two product principles, at least in terms of how we look at this technology that we are looking at. So one is, what Sam Altman said, that never bet against OpenAI's modeling, right? So we always are saying that, hey, the models are going to get better, and then how do we do keep leveraging them, right? That's one key thing. And the second thing is, what will the model improvement help us in augmenting the sellers? So these are the two key product principles or the technology principles and how we look at. We are not building any custom models yet. Well, at the best case, we're building a small language model for very specific tasks on how we orchestrate, different agents doing a different task by pulling in different models and not just relying on only one, like an O3 model.
Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. What about voice? Like, are you using, like, 11 Labs came out with like all these different ways of intonation
Yeah.
and et cetera. Like, are you using that to its fullest extent?
Yeah.
And have you
Like
seen a
this.
difference in performance of
Yes.
your adoption?
Yeah, Sesame and 11 Labs. There's also these other labs which are based in New York plus Bay Area based. They have like amazing annotations as well. And recently the 11 Labs model. So we always try to, whenever these models get upgraded, we try to launch a couple of agents as a test
Mm,
agents, and we clearly market so that our users are not like flabbergasted or super surprised in a way that, oh, who are these new voices? So we tell them that, hey, here is a new beta agent that you can go and play around and give us feedback. And we always want to get to those recent ones, because as you know, in sales, there is also this annotations and downward inflection. How do you ask questions? What kind of tone? That tonality is very important. So sometimes we also want to bring that into the mix. And 11 Labs has been great, by the way.
that's amazing. So let's go back to the other value that you're adding that you're not capturing. So you made a
Mhm.
really important point a minute ago. So a company like Rippling that is introducing a new SKU, or sorry, not a new SKU, like
Yeah.
a new product, every so often. And you're absolutely right. Sellers love to make money on the stuff that works in the past. Nobody likes to go selling new stuff because it may not even have product market fit for all you know.
Yeah.
So how do you capture that value, the value of the cross sell? That is one of the most difficult questions in SaaS right now.
100%, right? That's the most challenging thing. So, first and foremost, even enabling individuals on that. So, let's look at how enablement happens today.
Hmm.
There's this amazing sales rep or great manager who comes in, who gives, or even a product manager comes in and says that, hey, this is why we built this tool. Here is how this tool would work, and then show all the features there. And then say, here is how you can position to the customers. And
Hmm.
then the next step is sales enablement would put together an LMS where they say, here's a video, do a quiz. And the third thing that they would say is go record a Loom video and send it to your manager. That's it. Now, once you finish all these three steps, you're certified. You can go and then, oh, our revenue would be just flying and then it would be pouring into our war chest here or your revenue chest. It
Oh my
never
gosh,
happens that way.
you're triggering me right now. So okay,
It
so that
never
doesn't
happens.
happen. Okay, 100% it never happens. And why do we
Right?
keep doing it then? That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah. So that's what we know. We haven't figured out a better way, right? Like, but now imagine, like, you go and say that, hey, you need to run like 50 agents role plays, and that kind of like makes it a second nature for you. You give a
Mm,
scenario. There is this customer coming in. They're saying your core problems, but they're also sharing some edges and problems which you have ignored in the past. But now that you have an offering, go and practice with it for 50 times, and then that becomes a second nature. And then see in your real calls how much of this is being applied, and then measure that whole loop continuously, and then see what's the increase in your revenue. That's it.
yeah.
Boom. So this becomes a new way of complete functioning on how you can roll out new products. And then the other thing is, as you know, salespeople are are driven by incentives. So there's another factor which we also recommend is, hey, do also put together certain incentive there. And sometimes, but incentives alone won't solve the problem as well, right? Like that's where our closing the loop with this role play plus, tracking them in real calls would come into play.
Interesting. So when you are introducing a new product, there's
Hmm.
two parts that need to be updated. One is your ability to discover the needs for
Right.
the new product, right? And the second one is positioning the new product, based on this
Yeah.
new discovered problems. So how does your agent help you ask different questions and discover differently? And then on the same token, how do you turn that around and turn that into a pitch?
Awesome. The way it would work is, you can set up a custom framework in our agent. So depending on what the scenario is, you can also you have the way to steer, and this is where probably the enablement team, instead of creating content for LMS or setting up a quiz, now they can
Mm,
go and give a new context here and
yeah,
and set up this custom framework. And the way to do this custom framework in our product is today like a simple text prompt. It's
yeah.
not even that you need to create a massive document of 10 pages and then feed it into whatever system that you have. So we have made it super easy where they just go and they set up that context through normal text prompt, right? And once they do that, that first problem is gone. The way the bot will respond is based on this new context. It will ask you the questions. The agent will ask you the questions in the voice tone, and gives you information. Now we would measure. There's also a rubric which we call as a rubric on how we measure what the seller is even saying. So that rubric can also be set up by the enablement where they say, did Maruti ask a question about their application tracking system because that's a new product that we launched? And did he run these three discovery questions related to application tracking system? Boom.
Mm.
In the role play, if you did not touch that, it's very clear. You're not going to do that in the real call as well. It's extremely clear.
Oh, interesting, interesting. So when you talk frameworks, are you talking like Bant and Medic and Why Me Right Now, like all those frameworks, or are you talking about like literally the path of conversation you want your that your boss wants you to have?
It's a path to conversation. The medic band etc. Those are like the in the hierarchy. Those are the foundational frameworks, anyways. But
Got
within
it.
that, in Medic, what questions do you ask that unlocks the metrics for a need to position an application tracking system, which is your new
Right.
product?
Right. No, that's
Right.
brilliant. So let's take a different tack here, and
Yeah,
let's get a little bit controversial. So you're in the business of helping humans get better, right?
correct.
A lot of sales is moving into the business of just eliminating humans. So which one is going to prevail? Like, tell me why the AI SDR movement is wrong, and why they should go home, and you stay here.
This is like tech two philosophies of how Microsoft, Apple are in one bucket versus how Google and Meta are in another bucket, right? So it's like those two philosophies again here. So what we believe, at least like my core fundamental belief is, and also we both are humans here having conversation. Now imagine, well, two bots having a conversation. Who wants to watch that? Yeah, maybe when I was 16-year-old kid playing uh, Dota and Warcraft, I would love to watch that at that time, but probably not anymore, right? Like, I believe that people buy from people, and then
Hmm.
in this noise of the whole bots coming in, if you can stand out as a seller, still retaining that human touch, then the best thing is to augment individuals. And sales as a craft is a very people driven craft. And that's where I believe this philosophy is what would work. Whereas what is wrong with the AISTR moment, or replacing the salesperson, right? You know, a lot of times even I hated prospecting, and I've seen that the reps hated prospecting. So probably there's a decent use case for the AISTR in removing that whole prospecting if done well. Like, and I would not even call them AISTR anymore. Then it's all demand generation, right? Which is
Mm.
which is probably going into marketing. But replacing an AI account executor, no way, man. Like I don't think I would be able to sign a $10,000 contract with an AI account executor. Not yet. No.
So tell me more. There's people who sign a $10,000 credit card swipe, just with the demo and a Stripe page. So why, what's it blocking? Let's say 5K. 10K is probably too much, but let's say 5K. Like, what's it blocking, or is there an amount
Mhm.
that could be done with the execution of an AI versus, something that is more, that you need a human. Like under 10K is definitely AI. Over above
Yeah.
10K, you
Yeah.
need warm blood.
I love this question. There's so much nuance here, right? So if it's a 5K, we also need to look at what kind of product is it. Like, let's say, at remote, we used to sell an employer of record. An
Hmm.
employer of record, one seat is 7K. But then, let's say Manny is coming to remote and you want to hire someone in Germany, you still want to talk to a human to understand what are the policies in Germany and how remote can take care of that. You
Hmm.
still want that at least at 130-minute conversation before you put your credit card. So that's where you would want your seller to be enabled with AI, because your seller is probably selling 60 other different countries along with Germany as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But let's say if it's just like, hey man, like a tool like Superhuman, let's assume, and you're charging like $100 or $200. So those transactional sales where you're just order taking, like the way McDonald's does order taking, those can be replaced with AI,
Yeah.
right? So anywhere there's a second order skepticism of I need more information, I need a certain assurance that this will be solving my problem. I don't think there would be AI, that would be replaced by AI.
So what's it? So okay, I see the two. You pick two examples that are sort of far apart, right? Like
Yeah,
employment law in Germany versus a Big Mac.
yeah,
Those are fairly different purchases. Okay. So give me something that is a bit more nuanced, right? Like either make the meal complex, expensive, and like, anniversary level.
yeah.
You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? Or make the question on the B2B side a little bit less daunting, right? Like maybe I'm just hiring a contractor in Germany for a 6-month thing with like, you see what I mean? Not as complex as like, opening up a shop or like just buying McDonald's. So give me something a bit more nuanced.
Yeah. So let me give you a little bit more nuance, because I come from the HR payroll world with my previous two companies, and for 4 years, I'll take that one. So let's say you want to hire a contractor.
Yes.
The compliance with the contractor is two or three things. That's it, universally, and that becomes extremely easy, and that can be a transactional thing.
Yeah.
boom, done. And that you can just put in AI, and the AI can even talk to you and then answer those questions, and it's pretty straightforward because it's a very deterministic way of just doing things. Whereas, let's say if I'm hiring someone in Germany, I might come and say that, hey man, like this person might go on a maternity leave. What would it work?
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
becomes a little crucial and more nuanced. And even though there's a dollar value of only 7,000, but you just want to get that reassurance because you're dealing with people here. And then you want your new employee to be eligible for a maternity leave or paternity leave.
Can you extrapolate and say, and I'm just riffing with you here. Can you
Yeah.
extrapolate and say that if the decision has a big amount of downside,
Mhm.
then it's really important to have a human involved because there's a lot of empathizing to do and a lot
To-
of like, yeah, 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 I got you, I got you, got you. Is that would that be a good rubric?
That's also a good rubric, right? That's your third factor that we can add in saying that what would this imply or what would this mean for the business impact? And wherever there is a big change management that needs to be done by implementing a software, or wherever it just hits your core of the business, in that case, you still want a human assurance because it's almost like why a lot of CEOs hire McKinsey because when they give you a strategy and it fails, you could say, "Oh, McKinsey did wrong." So similarly, when I'm building buying the software, or the salesperson is probably did a wrong thing, and I know that I can go back to the seller to get extra support, and someone is accountable. I want that accountability when I'm making that purchase.
So I loved you went there. I know at least two AI agent companies that are in the business of replacing McKinsey right now. And even McKinsey bought an AI agent company to try to replace themselves out of the consulting game. So tell me
Sure.
more why McKinsey is the mark,
Yeah.
and is that mark moving? Like is it, over time as, Grok 4 just came out and apparently they're
Yeah.
smarter than McKinsey. So like
Totally.
what so tell me how is that gonna work? Is that
When
a,
you
a fixed thing or is it gonna change over time?
So when you're sitting in a board meeting and you want to say why this went wrong, you still want to blame McKinsey and not a McKinsey agent, right? That's the premium. That's the premium
That's
you're
right.
paying for,
A
right?
hundred percent. A hundred
So
percent.
McKinsey buying an AI agent company is to probably automate all their analyst work into slides and research work into good slides, right? But you still need the partner going and sitting with the CEO because something wrong happens. The CEO knows whom to blame, and there's some accountability there. It's the same mentality here, especially
Excellent.
if
So
you're
you're
an
buying a
enterprise seller.
scapegoat. So you buy your little goat and you say, this
Sure.
is the reason why everything went to shit. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, I would pay a lot of money for that. So that's a great thinking. So back to the go to market and the AI SDR advancement. So I like your point. AI SDRs belong in marketing because they're really just more demand gen, response, etc. What else is happening in the go to market stack that is just going to go to AI and you don't have to buy it anymore? So I love that you are actually taking on enablement. That's a huge expense. Everybody complains about their enablement platform. So tell me more. What else is going away and being replaced by agents?
Yeah, I think the managers, the 1:5 ratio managers are going to be like kind of shrink to probably 1:20 because
Yeah,
they
yeah,
would
yeah.
have a lot more time. All the auditing would be happening through agents, and they would get the right in point work on, hey, what is wrong with this player and how can you improve? That's it. And usually what do managers do a lot of time is they spend a lot of time on the spreadsheets with forecasting, or they just spend a lot of time in trying to analyze what is going wrong. And most of the time, what would remain right now with AI is they can eliminate all this spreadsheet work and grunt work, and they can truly focus on the human retention, and then just truly focus on how to enable this human be the best possible that they can, and remove all the junk work and the admin work, right? So that's one thing that I see that's happening in the AI world. And same with SDRs. Probably even if the AI SDRs are coming in, you still need the Salesforce to be built, and SDR traditionally is considered as an entry level role, whom you will groom and eventually make an enterprise seller in your organization. They are like your talent pool. So probably
Yeah.
we might not hire 100 people anymore. We might hire 10, because probably we might only need only 10 AEs, right? So that whole power law will kick in, and the organizations would be like 20%. Like it would. My bet is in the next 5 years, it will shrink by at least one fourth, if not anything, and it would eventually go down to like probably 20 sales reps selling 100 million ARR revenue. That's
Yeah,
where we'd
yeah.
get there.
So it's interesting because as you had the same problem to have with outreach, as seats go down, you
Yeah,
can't sell more minutes, right? Because you're selling minutes to humans that are doing human things.
yeah.
And if there is fewer humans, then you're either going to have to up your price per minute, or you're going
Yep.
to have to find other ways to extract value that are not completely dependent on the amount of time a human spends on your application.
Outcome. That's where outcome comes in. So imagine today in SaaS model, it's one seller, 1 million a year as a quota. Now,
Yep.
tomorrow, if you can make these 20 sellers the super sellers, and that means that they have 5 million as their quota, that the delta 4 million, if you're getting it through your agents, that's a clear outcome. How would you
Yeah.
charge it? So that's the opportunity, and that's where we will evolve.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting because, a million per rep, it's sort of like an enterprise rep and like the 90% of like the great majority of enterprise SaaS companies.
Yeah.
5 million per rep is like ServiceNow level stuff. You know what I mean? At that point, you're like almost monopoly. You're the only solution and you can charge whatever you want. So hence you're making that kind of money.
Yeah.
So let's summarize real quick because we're about to part. So I
Sure.
love that there's a clear takeaway. So you should always be capturing 10% of the value you deliver so that your customer feels like they're getting 10x value. Is that how you
Correct.
think about it?
Correct. That's how I think about it. That's one of the key takeaways that I learned from my mentor from Google.
So what else is another hot take that everyone should be, taking home with right now and implementing right now?
Yeah, man, like think of what are the ways on how you can empower your best employees or your best workforce. Forget about everything else and then see where AI can augment these individuals because these people with super skills are God's given gift and they're rare. Just try to augment them as much as possible. And you know that the average tenure of a seller is 18 months probably. Even the VP of sales is 18 months. And that means so much churn. Like how can you reduce that whole cycle and then just augment this person in a way that they're happy and they're always getting their commission check more than what their 100% quota means, and then just make them like super sellers.
That's amazing. That's what a great way to end it.
Yeah,
Maruti, thank you so much for coming to the pod. I think we cover a lot of ground in a very short amount of time. I'm looking at Arnon and he's nodding like we got a number of good hot takes.
okay.
We're gonna have a few will definitely blow up, but thanks again for coming.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Manny, for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you. We'll riff again on new topics as we see how our outcome-based pricing is evolving. See
Yeah,
you
I can
soon.
hardly I can hardly wait.